Liberals in the hot seat. There's a hot, stormy summer ahead for Canadians and for the federal government. This week, the Mass Casualty Commission released notes claiming the RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki may have jeopardized the police investigation to further the Trudeau government's political agenda. This as the government remains under fire for the use of the Emergencies Act and to whether Parliament was misled there. Inflation has soared to 7.7%, the highest in 40 years. The Conservatives, well, they're also in for a busy summer. There are less than 3 months until a new leader is selected, and it has been a nasty and contentious race. And what about the NDP? Can they stay relevant after their deal with the Liberals? What are the biggest issues facing the three big parties? The Scrum is here to answer all that. Joyce Napier, the CTV Ottawa Bureau Chief, is here. So is Stephanie Levitz, Parliament Hill reporter for the Toronto Star. She's on Parliament Hill. And our special guest this week is Nick Nanos, the CEO of Nanos Research. All right. Nick, I'm going to start with you. We're going to start biggest challenges for the three major parties. Lots facing the Liberals right now over the summer. What are the biggest challenges in your mind for Justin Trudeau and his party?
Oh, right now it's got to be inflation. You know, Canadians are getting crushed and will get crushed with higher interest rates. Evan, one thing to watch out for, anti-establishment fever that has been sweeping other democracies. Wait for it to come to Canada, because you know what? If Canadians can't pay the rent, if they can't pay the mortgage, they're going to be angry. And we've seen those Liberal numbers slide in the last number of days. Now they're 5 points back. So it's going to be ugly, and it's not going to be good for the Liberals. As
Scott Reid told me, Joyce, inflation's a government killer. What are the biggest challenges? There's a lot on the menu. What's on your menu?
Okay, I think I'm with Nick. Inflation, cost of living, that's obviously right. Okay. Geopolitical things, you know, the Emergencies Act, what happening with the RCMP, who said what to whom. I think their biggest challenge is going to be lineups, passports, airports, how many people are waiting for surgery, 700,000 perhaps. That's healthcare transfers. They've completely ignored that. 2.5 million people waiting to come into Canada, long line of immigrants, and we're saying that we're going to get 450,000 more this year. So I think that's under the general banner of, is this incompetence?
Competence issue. And Pierre Poilievre, by the way, already has an attack ad called the Waiting Nation on that. He's already given it a moniker. Steph, biggest challenge facing the government now?
Yeah, and I'm going to pick up exactly where Joyce left off on this question of competence. I mean, if the government cannot provide the basic services to which it is entrusted, namely passports, immigration, and those, coupled with rising inflation that are, you know, making people anxious and jittery, what do you end up with? A perfect recipe for the anti-establishment, you know, sentiment that Nick was talking about a minute ago. So, and meanwhile, throw into the mix all these allegations of political interference into the police, which really, I mean, come on. Like, have they learned nothing from their past allegations of political interference in other files? So if you're packaging together a Liberal government that is seen as both functionally incompetent and politically incompetent, I don't know how you continue to maintain the trust of Canadians going forward.
Okay, that's a long, hot summer recipe. Nick, biggest challenge for the Conservatives. They face a leadership race. We'll know who the new leader is September 10th. And I don't think nice is a word anyone's used to describe this nasty race. What are their biggest challenge?
Well, you know, it's going to be about staying together. The fact of the matter is, here's one prediction that I know is going to be right. The day after this leadership, the Conservative Party will be divided. People will be leaving the Conservative Party, whether they're more progressive voters because Pierre Poilievre wins, or, on the other hand, Pierre Poilievre supporters who are upset because the Progressive has won. So the fact of the matter is, right now, it's almost a no-win. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Conservatives try to manage that, regardless of who the winner is.
Joyce, more than 20 MPs were joining some of the reps of the trucker protest who are going to come back, apparently, on Canada Day. Is that one of the challenges facing the Conservative Party or not?
I don't know if that's a challenge for them. I think, interestingly, I mean, Nick is telling us they're ahead. No matter what they do, they're still ahead of the Liberals in the polls, which I find fascinating. They don't even have a leader. They have an interim leader, and we don't know who their leader is going to be. I mean, although we know Pierre Poilievre is the front runner, but we don't know. Will them cozying up to these people help them or hinder? So far, it doesn't seem to have hurt them. So it depends what happens on the 1st of July, obviously, and I don't think it's hurting them. I think that the Conservatives, as divided as they are, as nasty as this race is, even the caucus, there's in-caucus fighting as well, and we know that. So how come they're still so popular? Or is it that the Liberals are so unpopular?
Steph, you've been covering this, and just to pick up on where Joyce said, Michelle Rempel-Garner, who declined to run in Alberta, had that long letter as to why she's declining, which basically described chaos inside the federal and that provincial party, which you covered, and you've covered. What's the Conservatives' biggest challenge in your view?
So, I mean, break it down into two pieces, right? One, you have the leadership race. The absolute biggest biggest challenge rather for the summer is for Pierre Poilievre to mobilize all of these supporters and actually get them out to vote, and hope that the folks who are opposing him don't figure out a way to gang up in a material way that could cost him some support. He still needs to win this. I understand what the math looks like. The math looks like he has it in a walk. He still needs to win it, and it'll be fascinating to see how much of his get out the vote effort involves taking down other candidates in contrast, which will then feed in to their subsequent problem, which is what is going to happen after this leadership race. I think Nick's assessment that, the party will be divided is an accurate one. Will we see a whole bunch of people stampede for the doors suddenly? Will we just see a slow dribble of folks who say they won't run again? But there is dissent within caucus, and to figure out a way to get them all onto the same page moving forward, all that could take, in fact, is continued hits on Liberal fortunes. I mean, if they're ahead in the polls, the Conservatives, without just a temporary leader, I mean, how do they harness that, and how do they keep that momentum going? And it's possible the Liberals will just keep handing them gifts on that score.
They'll probably emerge from this race with over 600,000 members. For Conservatives, probably the most positive sign they've got going into a summer where it may end up being divisive. Okay, real quick, NDP, Nick.
Man, to make sure that nothing happens with the Liberals that will make it a stink bomb politically for the NDP, because if they look like they're a party that's just propping up an unpopular Liberal government, that's going to be bad news for Jagmeet Singh. It's going to be bad news for the New Democrats, and there'll probably be some, to quote a previous Prime Minister, some nervous Nellies perhaps in the New Democrats if those Liberals are hitting a controversy.
Okay, I've got to leave it there. Joyce Napier, Steph Levitz, Nick Nanos, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it very much.